Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Essay. Today we are gonna see what if Issei was a stray devil's tale. Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Prologue. Unknown location. 9 individuals race down a corridor that was seemingly carved from basalt, each possessing a look of determination upon their faces. None of them were older than 17 or 18, and most of them were beautiful girls. The one in the lead was a girl with blood-red crimson hair. Ria's Gremory. But you? There's another hall ahead. A blonde-haired Bishnan shouted from his place as point. Hyoudou Kiba held one of his holy demonic swords in his hand and a grim glint in his eye. Zenobia, Kaneko, take point. Roswis, cover them. Ria's ordered immediately, Asia, Gasper and Ravel, you are with me. Kiba and Irina, go wild. Let us blow through our foes and recover my Issei from the witch who has stolen him. Hi but you Ria-sama. Her peerage, Irina and Ravel responded variously and shifted their formation as she had directed, finishing just as they entered the hall. It was enormous, the size of a small football stadium, intricately decorated with fine carvings of countless intertwined dragons. As soon as the last member of the small group stepped over the threshold, a vast array of interlocking hexagonal shields snapped into place behind them, preventing retreat, while another set appeared at the only other exit from the room. From bitter experience, the Gremory group knew better than to try and break them down. They absorbed any demonic or holy energy that was directed against them, even a combination of the two, such as the holy demonic swords. As expected, a large number of magic circles the color of dried blood appeared around them, each bearing the symbol in chess for a queen piece in the center. Emerging from the circles were hunched winged creatures resembling the classic image of a gargoyle. Each was the size of a small horse and as bulky as an ox. Their 4-clawed limbs were deceptively wiry and their wings granted them flight. These guys again? Zenobia complained as she summoned her blade, X-Durandal, from its dimension. Does that witch seriously think that she can stop us with these things? They don't have to stop us. Roswis pointed out, just slow us down. So far, they've succeeded. Not for much longer. Ravel Phoenix snarled, her fiery wings, unique to her family, spread wide, ready to take flight. Fire pooled in her hands as she glared at the beasts that stood between her and her beloved Issei-sama. Well, said Ravel-chan. Ria's nodded approvingly as the magic she inherited from her mother, a former member of the Bael family, the power of destruction, pooled in her own hands, the red-tinged darkness seething as it fought to be released at Ria's foes. Let us sweep these creatures away, my adorable servants. Needing no further encouragement, the Gremory group, +2, attacked the gargoyle army arrayed before them. Throne room, unknown location. The throne room was massive. Twice the size of the hall that the Gremory group was fighting in, the ceiling rose to such lofty heights that no one could see it unaided. Of a similar design to Westminster Abbey's interior, albeit without the religious iconography or pews. At one end of the room, a truly giant pair of doors carved from interlocking pieces of stone and wood barred entry to the room, each emblazoned with the symbol of the queen in the center of them. On the opposite side of the room was a magnificent throne that took up the entirety of the wall. Carved from a massive piece of marble, it drew the eye with the carvings drawing one's eye down to the rather modest seat that was the throne proper and the person who was sat in it. Currently, the occupant was a tall female with long black feathered hair. She was dressed entirely in black and her face was concealed with a simple face mask. Divided in half vertically, one side was black, the other white, with red outlines around the eye holes and tear lines in red, running from the corners of the eyes to the edge of the mask. In one hand, she grasped the armrest of the throne, while in the other she held a staff. The staff was perhaps 2 meters long, seemingly made from interlocking and interconnected pieces of purple and silver metal. Attached to the top of the staff was an arc of silver, inside of which floated a small orb. Close examination shows that it is a model of the planet Earth. But together, both staff and wielder presented a rather intimidating sight that was further compounded by the aura of barely concealed power that they both extruded. An ordinary human would be rendered insensate just by being near her. The sharp eyes of the female, barely visible through her mask's eyeholes, were currently locked on a screen floating in midair to one side of the throne. It was showing the Gremory group cutting a swathe through her army of gargoyles like a hot knife through butter. She winced at the on-screen images of Zenobia bisecting a gargoyle in twain vertically from groin to crown, Kaneko smashing through a dozen in seconds with inhuman strength, Irina freezing one solid with an ice attribute holy demonic sword and Kiba ripping a whole slew of gargoyles to pieces using blade blacksmith, countless swords cutting them to ribbons from below. The attention of the female honed in on Ria's Gremory slaughtering her gargoyle minions with the power of destruction. The marble armrest of her throne groaned as her hand clenched it in anger. Troubled. The male voice drew her attention from the screen as she turned to look at the speaker, who was standing in the shadow of a nearby pillar. No, merely vexed with myself. The female corrected him as she returned her attention to the screen. Her voice was soft and cultured, sounding like that of an aristocrat. I knew that the Gremory group was immensely powerful. She continued after a moment, I knew my gargoyles would only barely be able to even delay their advance, and yet this surprises me. I should have strengthened them before carrying out my plan because this is somewhat embarrassing for me. She gestured at the orgy of destruction taking place on the screen, making the man chuckle. And again, you ended up not needing to do that, Name-chan. He said teasingly. Mei glared at him for a moment before returning her gaze to the screen, where the Gremory group had finished wiping out the gargoyles and was now proceeding to exit through the opposite entrance to the one through which they had entered. At this rate, they'll be here in less than 5 minutes. Mei mused, time to get set up then. She rose gracefully from her throne and looked at the man leaning against a pillar. Ready? She asked. I am. Let's get to it then. 5 minutes later. Outside the throne room doors. The Gremory group stood in front of the massive doors emblazoned with the symbol of their enemy. Kiba whistled. But these doors must be at least 10 meters tall and 4 meters wide each. Stand back, my servants. Ria said as she strode forwards. She concentrated and created a truly massive ball made of the power of destruction. It was bigger than anything she had ever made with her own power. With a snarl, she hurled it at the doors which, being only stone and wood, were destroyed in an instant. Amid the destruction, the group of devils and Soul Angel rushed into the throne room. Studiously ignoring the vastness of the room, Ria's gaze fell upon the woman sitting casually, yet regally, on the throne on the opposite side of the room. Mei Schwarzwald. The crimson-haired ruined princess snarled as she prepared to attack. 1 month previously, 3 weeks after Shalba Beelzebub's attempt to destroy the underworld after school. The Cult Research Club's clubroom, old school building, cum academy, we're all here, but you. Akeno announced as the members of the Occult Research Club settled down into the chairs and sofas scattered around the room. I think Ria's butchu's a bit busy, Akeno-sama. Ravel pointed at one Ria's Gremory sitting and holding one Hyodou Issei whilst staring into his eyes. It should be noted that the young Phoenix Ion was looking at Issei wistfully as she spoke. Ara. The vice president smiled, Ria's, you can make out with Issei-kun later. Your Ani-sama is due to arrive any minute now, remember? Spoil sport. The Gremory heiress pouted at her queen, very well. Now, my adorable servants, my Ani-sama, Serzich's Lucifer, is going to drop by to inform us of something. The Citri group will be joining us, as will Sona's Ni-sama, the Mamserafo Leviathan. Where is Azazel-sensei? He said something about having to go to Grigori HQ. Kiba volunteered, he looked pretty worried. Don't tell me that the Cows Brigade is gearing up for another attack. Issei groaned, seriously, we've beaten Volley's group, the old Mam faction and the Hero faction. Why can't they take a hint? Some people are idiots, Issei. Ria said comfortingly, hopefully, it isn't the Cows Brigade. Maybe a particularly strong fallen angel has gone rogue. Michael-sama hasn't mentioned anything to me about anything like that. Irina piped up. Self-proclaimed angel. Zenobia muttered just loud enough for Irina to hear. I'm a real angel. I'm Michael-sama's ace. Irina wailed, Issei-kun, Zenovia's being mean. Now Zenobia, Irina, calm down. Issei calmed them both down at length. Still, why would Serafal-sama be coming along? Asia asked as she sat next to Issei, lightly flushing at being so close to her. Who knows? The Gremory princess replied with a shrug as she retook her own seat on Issei's other side. Issei, is there any problems with the boosted gear with Draga Sleep? I can use the basic abilities of the boosted gear, as well as the basic balance breaker, but illegal move Trina, as well as Cardinal Crimson promotion are beyond me right now. Issei replied, Drake put too much of himself into keeping my soul inside of the boosted gear, as well as the energy we expended combining with Great Red. Well, now that you have overcome the need for a countdown to activate it, as well as the time limit, the boosted gear. Scale mail will be plenty strong enough to fend off any but the strongest enemies, Issei-sama. Ravel put in. Arigato, Ravel-chan. Issei smiled at her, making the high-class devil flush bright red. Humph. It isn't like I needed to tell you that. The girl muttered, showing exactly why she was classed as a tsundere by her brother, Riser. There's my brother's magic circle now. Ria said in relief as the magic circle of the Gremory family appeared in the space set aside for such things. Grafia, Serzich's queen and wife, appeared in the circle before stepping out and nodded a greeting to the Gremory group. Ria-sama, it is good to see you well. She said with a calm look on her face, Hyodou Issei, have you recovered from your exertions in the dimensional gap? Not fully, Drake is still down for the count. Issei said with a gesture at his left arm, where his sacred gear appeared from. I see, where is the former Governor-General of the Fallen Angels? She asked as her eyes darted around the room. He's gone to Grigori HQ. Kiba informed her, he looked very serious. Hardly surprising. Grafia said with a sigh, the meeting will be held in the student council office. Serzich's peerage are setting up a barrier around the school as we speak, so we should be secure. Follow me and keep together. Grafia, is there something wrong? Riaz asked her sister-in-law in concern. Grigori HQ was attacked yesterday by a stray devil of immense power. The gray-haired woman replied, we should start moving now. The Gremory group was shocked. A stray devil had attacked the headquarters of the fallen angels. How was that possible? Stray devils had no control over their powers, having betrayed and killed their masters. Fallen angels, with their power to create weapons of light, should be able to handle one without any kind of trouble. They followed Grafia from the building, and they noticed the telltale signs that a powerful barrier was in place, keeping any regular human out of the campus, as well as obscuring the happenings within the campus from sight. That is a far more powerful barrier than what was used for the Three Factions Peace Conference. Riaz said in an undertone to Issei. What reason would they have for using a barrier more powerful than that one? Issei asked with a frown. There was no answer to be had as they entered the main school building and headed towards the student council room. Grafia rapped on the door smartly and was let in by Smjai Akita, Seerking's knight and Kiba's former sword instructor. Any trouble? He asked quietly. None. Grafia replied with a shake of her head, has everyone arrived? Hi, although Serafol Dono is somewhat overly concerned for Sona-sama's safety. Smjai replied quietly. As the Gremory group entered the room, they saw Serafol Leviathan, one of the four ma'am, standing over her sweat-dropping little sister, Sona Sitri, with her staff out and ready to blast whoever came near the Cum Academy Student Council president with her powerful ice magic. Looks like whatever's going on has Serafol Sama worried. Riaz mused, Ani Sama. Seerking's Lucifer, Ria's elder brother, looked up from the conversation he was having with his bishop, McGregor Mathers, and looked relieved to see his little sister. Riaz. Good to see that you're alright. He said with a relieved smile on his face, Haim Issei. Akeno. Good to see that you are both alright as well. Seerking-sama, what's going on? Issei asked. As I'm sure Grafia informed you, the Grigori headquarters was attacked yesterday by a stray devil of immense strength. The Mam Lucifer stated grimly, this would ordinarily not be an issue, were it not for two factors. First, the headquarters complex was almost empty, barring a skeleton staff. Secondly, the stray devil in question was no ordinary stray devil. Was all Issei could say to that. As you might imagine, most stray devils are pawns, knights, bishops and rooks. Seerking said, ones who sought greater power and slew their master in order to obtain it. The evil piece within them then goes berserk after a certain period of time without a master, mutating their body to reflect the darkness within them. The Gremory group nodded. This was common knowledge they had all earned shortly after being reincarnated as devils. Tell me, how many cases of stray devils have you ever heard of that were formerly queen pieces? Seerking asked. None. Riaz replied, queen pieces are chosen with greater care than most of the other evil pieces. Usually, a devil's queen is the single most loyal member of their peerage and one that is in turn trusted far above the others although I trust all of my adorable servants equally. I'd be happy to leave my life in any of their hands. But you? Gasper teared up at this declaration. An admirable sentiment. Her older brother said with a nod, sadly, there is one. A queen who slew not only her master, but almost the entirety of the rest of her peerage at the same time. The horrified gasp erupted from the members of the Gremory group. Why? Riaz gasped in horror, her hands flying to Issei's seeking comfort, which he willingly gave his girlfriend and master. We don't know. The elder Gremory shook his head sadly. She didn't stick around after killing them. She did steal the bodies of her former peerage mates though. Later, we discovered that she stole their sacred gears and took them for herself somehow. Asia squeaked and trembled as she remembered being killed by the fallen angel Rainer for exactly that purpose, so the cruel fallen angel could use her twilight healing sacred gear for her own ends. Issei's hand snaked around her waist, pulling her close to him, and the blonde ex-nun sighed contentedly as she felt the familiar sensation of safety that Issei always projected to her. As long as he was around, no one would kill her for her sacred gear ever again. But once its wielder dies, the sacred gear should move on to its next host. Riaz protested in confusion, how could she have gotten her hands on them after they died? She was a powerful magician and a genius prodigy at magic before she was reincarnated as a devil. Seerking replied, if anyone could figure it out, she could. But what happened at the Grigori HQ? Gasper asked shakily. He had spent some time there and hoped all the people who had tried to help him with his sacred gear forbidden Baelor view before Issei Senpai returned from the dimensional gap. The building itself has been brought to the point of structural collapse, according to Governor General Shemhazai. Grafia reported, we have not received any casualty reports as of yet, however. What we do know is disturbing and more than slightly puzzling. Seerking added, she somehow infiltrated the underworld, bypassed a barrier surrounding the HQ complex, and wreaked havoc in the complex before she escaped, stealing something from the Grigori in the process. Before he could elaborate, Azazel appeared in a flash of light from a magic circle. The usually laid-back man was grim and haggard. Azazel sensei. Issei looked at him in concern, are you alright? I'm fine, Issei-kun. The former Governor-General of Grigori said with a tight smile, my former subordinates are not doing so well, however. What are the casualties? SeerKing asked intently. All fallen angels who were within the HQ have suffered at least one broken bone in combat, with a stray devil with some, the actual guards, suffering multiple breaks as well as concussions. Azazel growled, remarkably, there were no fatalities. Most of the personnel will need some help to fully recover. Riaz, might I borrow the powers of your bishop, Asia Argento? Of course. Riaz said with a nod, Akeno. I'm afraid that neither your queen nor Issei-kun will be permitted to leave, Riaz. SeerKing said firmly, you can't go either. Fine. Roswis. The crimson-haired ruin princess directed her former Valkyrie rook, Kiba, you go as well. Render what aid you can, but guarding Asia is your top priority. Hi but you Riaz-sama. The two she named responded immediately. Asia, go but be careful. Riaz continued, no running off. Go there, heal them and come back to me, alright. Hi, but you. Asia nodded determinedly. Azazel empowered a magic circle to take them to Grigori HQ, and the three vanished in a flash of light. Why is it that you are acting hyper-protective of me, Ani-sama? Riaz asked with a frown, even Serafal-sama is going above and beyond her usual level of devotion to Sona here. Thank you for noticing, Riaz. Sona deadpanned. Her peerage chuckled in the background. Even they weren't allowed near their master with Serafal on guard. SeerKing sighed. The stray devil that is at the heart of this incident was once considered as a candidate for being a queen for one of you two. Sona and Ria's eyes widened at this revelation. Fortunately, you both acquired suitable queens by the time she was reincarnated into a devil, so it was a moot point. SeerKing said grimly, the girl had nowhere to go, so she was put into the peerage of a researcher of the Bael family. Roll on 6 years and she kills him and the rest of her peerage before fleeing. A day later, she returns and slays the guards at the Bael family mausoleum before stealing the corpses of all of her former peerage barring the king. Then she all but vanished. That was 3 years ago. We imposed a media blackout of what happened. Grafia said softly, only the four ma'am, their peerages, as well as the heads of the 72 pillars families, even know about the incident. The sole person outside of that circle who knows about the details of the incident is Sekiryūtei Bael, and that is because he attempted to stop her from fleeing the first time. Attempted to stop her? You don't mean? Issei said with disbelief. That's right. 3 years ago, Sekiryūtei fought against her and lost. Grafia said gravely. This revelation took Issei aback. He and Sekiryūtei had to go all out in order to determine the victor between them, and Issei could safely say that he had only fought stronger opponents when it was SeerKing's or Tannen. That this stray devil had defeated him just after murdering her peerage and master was more than slightly worrisome. But we know what it was she stole. Riaz asked quietly. We're a little too debilitated to check the records. Azazel replied, hopefully Roswis will be able to help strengthen the building before it collapses. Then we'll be able to search through the records for what it was that was stolen. But why now? Why attack the fallen angels now of all times? Issei asked in confusion, they didn't suffer any casualties in that idiot Shalba's rampage. They're as strong as they've ever been, so why attack them? Because we've been running low on personnel. Azazel snorted, the HQ has never been so undermanned in centuries. We've been sending teams all across the underworld to help recover from the Bandersnitches and Jabberwocky attacks. She just took advantage of our goodwill. She's just as cunning as I remember her being. Eh? Azazel-sensei, you know her? Irina asked. Indeed. May Schwarzwald. The Queen of Blood and Betrayal, the only SSS-class stray devil in the history of the raiding game. Azazel said with a shake of his head, I met her 2.5 years ago while I was conducting a recon of a city in Okinawa. She was sad. Sad and somber. Wore a mask that covered her entire face. Black and white, split down the middle vertically. Did you fight? Kaneko asked quietly. No, we agreed that fighting in the middle of a human city was just begging for collateral damage. The fallen angel said with a sigh, she did say that she would like to fight me at some point, if only because she had promised someone close to her that she would do so. She didn't say who and I didn't think it politic to ask. The name sounds Chinese and German. Zenobia muttered. Before she was reincarnated as a devil, May was a Chinese-German human who lived in Nagoya with her mother. SeerKing said quietly, she witnessed her mother's murder and awoke her sacred gear, slaughtering all of the people who killed her mother. Such a thing Riaz was appalled. I suspect that incident contributed to her descent into insanity. SeerKing sighed, sadly, it seems insanity has not dulled her intellect by any degree. Quite. Grafia said, over the past 3 years, there have been a few sightings of her, flitting between China, Germany and Japan, as well as a couple of times in the underworld. Never before has she revealed herself quite so openly. Not only that, she has stated her eventual goal, the boosted gear. What? Rhea snarled, an aura of demonic energy surrounding her as she clung to Issei. She dares to target my darling Issei. I will not permit it. The faces of the rest of the Gremory group took on expressions of steely determination as they nodded in agreement. Irina had to clamp down on her holy aura, otherwise it would hurt her friends. Zenobia felt Durandal shiver as it felt her own bloodlust rise. Small tendrils of lightning crawled across Akeno's body as she felt her anger spike. Ravel started muttering under her breath and flexing her hands as if she were throttling someone. Kaneko merely walked over to the unoccupied side of Issei and clung to him lightly with a muttered, "Senpai isn't going anywhere." As I said, her goal isn't Issei-san in and of himself, it is his sacred gear. Grafia said softly, likely she will attempt to extract it should she capture him. That shall not come to pass. Rhea's Gremory had never spoken like that to her sister-in-law, but the dark angry tone was clearly directed at May Schwarzwald rather than Grafia. That's why we are here, Rhea's. SeerKing said comfortingly, all we can do right now is wait to be told what it was that she stole. Azazel, is there any security camera footage of her attack? Thought you'd never ask SeerKing. The Occult Research Club advisor said. He raised the artificial arm that had replaced his left arm after sacrificing it against Kateria Leviathan and ejected a disc from the palm of his hand and passed it to Grafia. I think we should show Rhea's group exactly what we're up against. In short order, a large screen TV was pulled from somewhere. What kind of budget did the student council have? Issei was forced to wonder, and soon, the disc was showing the relevant camera images of the attack from the previous day. It was unreal. 1 minute, the corridors of the Grigori HQ were empty, the guards bored and a few personnel busy with paperwork. The next minute a tall black-haired girl wearing pitch-black robes and a black and white mask was striding down the corridors of the building and smashing the fallen angel guards and personnel, as if they were ordinary humans. She barely even moved her hands, and she put down 3 guards like they were nothing. How is she doing that? Issei muttered, it looks familiar, somehow. Gravity magic. Serafal said, she is capable of using extremely powerful gravity magic on a more powerful scale to the sacred gear gravity jail. Well, that sacred gear requires line of sight in order to work, May's magic has no such limitation. Look. On the screen, a fallen angel tried to attack the masked girl from behind with a spear of light, only to be crushed to the ground with a negligent jerk of her head. Her control is excellent. SeerKing commented, she has come a long way in just 3 years. Truly. Grafia agreed, I wonder why she wears the mask though. That display of gravity magic leaves no doubt as to who she is, so why? What do you mean, Grafia-san? Asked Issei, is gravity magic so rare? In the last millennium, less than a dozen devils have mastered gravity magic. McGregor said quietly, in this world, 3 attributes reign supreme over all of the others, other than demonic and holy power. In order of strongest to weakest these 3 are time, space and gravity. Sacred gears such as Dimension Lost and Gravity Jail are highly prized because they bypass the need to study the related magics. Devils and angels can use the dimensional magic with ease because we possess incredible longevity and have the time to study them completely. For a human magician to master gravity magic is the next best thing to impossible, for a devil it is possible, but most prefer flashier magic like lightning or fire. And yet, Grafia took it from here. And yet May was well on the way to mastering gravity magic before she was reincarnated. She is what most would refer to as a prodigy among prodigies. Had she not gone insane, she would be a high-class devil right now. Most of the Gremory group was shocked at this. Promoting from a low-class devil to a mid-class was one thing, but this was another. You'll want to hear this part. Azazel said grimly. He fiddled with the control as the woman on screen licked up one of the badly beaten guards. Tell me what I wish to know and I will let you and your men live. The voice of the girl was icy and blunt, but at the same time distorted, as if she wore a voice changer of some sort. Damn devil. The hapless fallen angel struggled fruitlessly in her hands. Stray devil. The girl corrected, now. Where is Project Fallen Terra? How do you? The fallen angel gasped in shock. Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. The girl sounded amused, now, tell me where it is. Like I'd know. The guard gasped, I'm a guard. True enough. She acknowledged, you do know all of the high security areas in this building, however, being the guard commander. Tell me that knowledge and you and your men shall live. Decide now. The conflict on the man's face was plain, but he eventually gave in and told her the 3 high security locations in the buildings that only the leaders of the Grigori, the cadre, could access. Not that you'll be able to get in. He finished with a snarl. The masked visage of the stray devil tilted to one side slightly as if to consider this. Perhaps, perhaps not. I must commend you for your common sense. Not many would consider their subordinates' lives to be worth more than what they guard. Now, I bid you good night. She released the man and then smashed him to the ground with another blast of gravity magic, making the poor man slip into merciful unconsciousness. That was brutal. Akeno shook her head. She was a sadist, but what the girl had done was just outright cruelty, forcing him to choose between his duty and the lives of his subordinates. Now then, first Project Fallen Terra, the girl said aloud, then the Sekiryūtei's boosted gear. Once I have those, I can finally fulfill my heart's desire. She walked off the camera and the image abruptly cut out. That's all we have. Azazel said with a frustrated sigh, the battle that the guards of the restricted sections waged against her damaged the surveillance systems. All 3 secure areas are in such a mess that we don't even know what was taken and what was just messed up. Ezekiel was organizing the cleanup when I left. Doesn't the project name ring a bell? Seerking asked. Just that the one responsible for it was one of Kakabiel's subordinates that perished not long ago. Azazel shrugged, he was a warmonger, so it was likely something deadly, defective or both. And for all we know, she took it. Great. Seerking said with a sigh. Oh, Kakabiel and his supporters had a separate lab complex for their experiments. The former governor-general replied, once he was consigned to Cocytus, Kakabiel's followers abandoned their research and returned to the Grigori HQ. For all we know, Project Fallen Terra might still be there. Where is the facility? Seerking asked, whatever it is that May seeks must be kept out of her hands at all costs. Well, that's the thing. It's a flying airship of some sort that flies at completely random paths in the human world. Azazel chuckled nervously, all those so-called UFO sightings that were reported. That's the airship. After it was abandoned, it maintains a holding pattern at the very center of the geomagnetic North Pole. But that changes position every year. Riaz put in, do you mean the place where the pole was when the airship was abandoned or the current location of the geomagnetic North Pole? Yes. Azazel said blandly. You haven't a clue, do you, Azazel-sensei? Issei asked rhetorically. Well, I suppose it doesn't matter much. Riaz sighed, it ought to be easy to discover the location of the geomagnetic pole at the time Kakabiel was incarcerated. It only shifts between 37 and 55 miles a year, so if we find the spot where it was, the airship should be within a few miles of it. Did I mention the optical camouflage and the spell arrays that attack all non-fallen angel presences that approach it? Azazel asked sheepishly. You did leave that part out. Seerking remarked dryly, any other tidbits of information that might have fallen by the wayside? No, not at this moment. Azazel said whimsically. Just then, a magic circle appeared, making Smjai, silent until then, to place his hand on his katana's hilt, ready to draw his blade in case it was an intruder. Seeing that it was a Gremory magic circle did nothing to make him lower his guard. Only after Asia, Roswis and Kiba appeared, with no other people with them, did the master swordsman remove his hand from his blade. But you? Azazel-sensei. Kiba said urgently, one of the Grigori's mobile research labs in Canada has been attacked. Riaz sighed. The Canadian Arctic, I presume? Kiba was taken aback by this. Yes. How did you? A previous discussion. Azazel said with a sigh, now then, I had better go and have a word with the rampaging Oju-sama. But Azazel, the Canadian Arctic, en route to Kakabiel's airship. Most people who know Azazel class him as a very easygoing kind of guy, despite the fact he is one of the most powerful fallen angels. This was a guise he had deliberately cultivated in order to hide his razor-sharp and highly strategic mind. One facet of Azazel's personality that was relatively unknown to anyone outside of the Grigori or the high-ranking members of Heaven and the Underworld was that he cared greatly for his subordinates. Half the reason he had sued for peace between the 3 factions in the first place was so his then vice-governor could openly marry his pregnant devil lover. Therefore, as he flew at breakneck speeds towards the airship, arrogantly called the Morning Star by Kakabiel, he was busy cursing himself for not eliminating May when he had the chance 3 years ago. Oh, there were good reasons for not attacking her. Innocent lives would be risked in a battle between him and a powerful stray devil who'd somehow managed to resist deforming into a hideous monster, but he still should have taken care of her. If he had, his former subordinates wouldn't have been injured today. That was the complete and absolute truth. Although he had to wonder at her restraint. May had had the chance to utterly slaughter the fallen within the building, yet she had only dealt just enough damage to disable them, and no more than that. This doesn't make sense. If she's so greedy for power that she slaughtered her king and peerage for it, why is she showing restraint against people she has no reason to hold herself back against? Azazel thought with a frown, before shaking his head slightly. The reason didn't matter. All that mattered was getting to May and stopping her. Azazel spotted the Morning Star in the distance. Kakabiel had fashioned the thing to look like the Hindenburg, the airship that had caught fire at its moorings in 1937, ending the Great Airship era. What bad taste. Several explosions dotted the side of the great airship as a lone figure flew from the wrecked remains of an airlock on the black wings of a devil. Reaching inside his shirt, Azazel pulled out a drone that he fiddled with for a moment before tossing it into the air. It fell for a moment before stabilizing and floating in midair. A camera lens protruded from one side of the spherical drone and whirred as it focused on him. Now then. He muttered as he made for the stray devil who had attacked his former subordinates, time to punish the willful Oju-sama. But the Gremory group and company. Issei was sitting next to Asia and Riaz, with Kaneko sitting on her seat, Aka his lap. The rest of Ria's peerage was seated around them, with Sona and her peerage to one side, Serafo keeping a wary eye out in case someone attacked her sister. Seerking and his peerage sat to the other side talking quietly amongst themselves. When the large TV flashed into life, all eyes flashed to it as it displayed the image of a burning airship and two figures. One was Azazel, the other was the black-cloaked figure of May Schwartzwald, both hovering in mid-air thanks to their wings. May looked exactly as she had in the security footage, with two exceptions. First, she had her hair tied back into a ponytail to avoid it getting in her face as she flew. Second, she carried a large case easily in one hand. Damn. She got it. Seerking cursed. The question is, can she keep it though? Grafia said quietly, but she fell silent as May started to speak. Azazel. Long time no see. May said casually, how's the arm? I heard you lost it to Kateria Leviathan. Oh, you mean this? Azazel held up his artificial left arm. Yes, Kateria was quite stubborn. She even used one of Ophis' snakes. It still wasn't enough to defeat me. That matches what I heard. May remarked, I was rather disappointed when I heard that you lost your arm. There's no pride in defeating a one-armed opponent, but I see that you used your sacred gear research to manufacture a suitable replacement. You think that just because I had lost an arm that you could defeat me? Azazel asked amusedly, you may have defeated Sekiryūtei Bael, but I am far more powerful than he is. Even short an arm, I would have been more than a match for you. Sekiryūtei-sama has grown so strong over the last 3 years. May mused, I watched the rating game between him and Ria's Oju-sama. It was an excellent fight. Is he well? He is. From what I hear he handily defeated the descendant of the hero Heracles during Shalba Beelzebub's attempt to destroy the underworld. Azazel replied. Heracles, eh? Well, that's excellent news. Although her face couldn't be seen, it was obvious that she was fond of Sekiryūtei. Well then, now that we've exhausted polite conversation, is that what you attacked my former subordinates to obtain? Azazel asked, becoming serious as he gestured at the box. Indeed it is. May replied as she hefted the box, it has a troublesome seal on it, but it's nothing I cannot breach. I do apologize for being rough with your men, but if I am to fulfill my heart's desire, I cannot permit anyone to stand in my way. Oh? Azazel sounded curious, and what might your heart's desire be? It's a secret. May replied, almost playfully, but now I have this, I can start my plan to acquire the boosted gear from the Sekiryūtei. As he is right now, he will not be a major obstacle to overcome. Underestimating Issei-kun is usually a mistake. Azazel remarked, plus, the Switch Princess will not be willing to allow you to kill her boyfriend. Azazel. Ria shrieked, do not call me that. Especially not in front of an enemy. Her red face was made worse by May actually chuckling at her nickname, given to her by a member of Volley Lucifer's team, Bikram Sun Wukong, after the attack by Diabol Astaroth and Shalba Beelzebub, and Issei's subsequent fall into, and recovery from, the Juggernaut Drive. I've seen the dolls, but I never expected people to actually call Ria's Oju-sama that. May chuckled, I suspect she's going to blast you once she sees you again, Azazel. Such is the life of the advisor of the Occult Research Club of Cum Academy. Azazel shrugged nonchalantly, now, I would appreciate it if you surrendered peacefully. Any chance of that? None, I'm afraid. May replied firmly, besides I have a promise to keep. Pardon me for a moment. She snapped her fingers thrice, and 3 teleportation circles appeared around her, disgorging a trio of things. They were slate gray and the size of a Carthus, with spindly limbs and large wings, with the heads of snarling dogs. What the heck are those things? Issei asked. Gargoyles. Akeno told him, a western subspecies of troll. Usually, you don't see them moving, but they can move fairly quickly when they want to. These things look like gargoyles but they do not feel like gargoyles. Azazel mused, aha. These are golems, aren't they? Golems? Issei was lost again. A magician's construct. McGregor informed him, originally, it was from the Bible Psalm 136:16, if I remember correctly. We adopted them for simple labor fetching and carrying, that kind of thing. Traditionally, they are either powered by Shem, a piece of paper with one of the Jewish names for God written on it, placed in its mouth, or by having the word emet or truth written on its forehead. These have no sign of the latter and, as they are snarling, I can rule out the former. If they're simple labor devices, why is she summoning them? Asia asked in confusion. Attack. May commanded, much to the shock of those assembled, as well as Azazel. The gargoyles roared and flew at Azazel with bared fangs and rending talons. I'm being underestimated. The advisor of the Occult Research Club remarked as he created a spear of light. In 3 quick slashes, the gargoyles were cleft in twain by Azazel, who looked as relaxed as he did while playing Tekken Tag Tournament. The flash of light from May drew their attention. She was sinking the large box that housed Project Fallen Terra into another teleportation circle. The gargoyles were only a distraction. Issei cursed. Now none of that. Azazel scolded May as he sent a large barrage of light spears at her. With another absent click of her fingers, May summoned a flock of gargoyle golems to block the incoming rain of spears, a task they proved most able to perform. They blocked every single spear that Azazel sent at them. TCH. Pesky things. Azazel muttered. You're being rather harsh to my poor golems. May remarked as she flew high above the gargoyles, who crumbled to dust with a gesture, her hands now empty. They try hard, you know. Do tell how you created them. Azazel said, I cannot see any carvings on them, nor has any parchment or paper fallen from any of the destroyed bodies, so I confess to some curiosity as to how they function. When I slew my former master, I stole outlines for an artificial sacred gear that he had been working on. May replied, behold the power of the artificial sacred gear Dragon's Tooth, otherwise known as the blood of Enkidu. Unlimited golem creation. Wait, her former master? Issei said with a frown, the researcher from the Bael family. Amadeus Bael was a devil who possessed a brilliant mind, although not as much so as Azazel's. SeerKing's, he was fascinated by sacred gears, which is why every person in his peerage, barring one, possessed one, to aid in his research. So stealing from others is it? Azazel asked lazily. Ha. He couldn't complete it. I finished it, so quite a bit of the credit goes to me for figuring out where Amadeus' team went wrong. May replied with a shrug, now that my hands are free I can fight you myself. Is she nuts? Irina asked in confusion, does she really think she stands a chance against Azazel sensei? May is quite possibly one of, if not the most powerful stray devil in history. Graphia said softly, she has a cunning mind and never entered a fight without a plan. If she's challenging Azazel so brazenly, she has a scheme in mind. Oh? So you aren't going to run? Azazel sounded honestly amused, I survived fighting against the Seraphs, the original Formam, and the two heavenly dragons at their most powerful. Do you seriously think that you can stand against me? I can with the aid of an old friend. May replied confidently. She spread her arms wide before calling out, I invoke the brave soul of Takana Marisu, my ever-faithful bishop. Your mistress demands your presence. The blue glow covered her body, before a silver necklace appeared around her neck, a sapphire pendant hanging from it, carved into the shape of a snarling dragon's head. The fangs of the blue dragon. Seraphil exclaimed, white with shock. But I take it that isn't her own sacred gear then? Issei asked. No. It originally belonged to her peerage's second bishop, Takana Marisu. SeerKing replied, she was a Hanyu before being reincarnated as a devil, half Imkai and half human. Her mother was a Yukiana, and her father was a hiker that she rescued on a mountain. Her sacred gear is also known as the Frozen Fangs of Purgatory, as the only thing colder than the ice magic that it creates is the icy depths of the Cocytus River. This is why we're guarding So-chan. Seraphil explained, the water magic of the Citri family is useless against that sacred gear. Using the sacred gear of your slain former comrade. Azazel asked angrily, how low have you fallen? You have no idea what you are talking about. May replied, you have no idea what my sisters meant to me, what they still mean to me. Now stop talking and fight. From Bullwinter. The howling gale of ice and wind descended upon Azazel, sending him tumbling in the air. May followed up with a barrage of ice spears that Azazel countered with his arms built-in holy light gun. Tricky. Azazel hissed, but not tricky enough. With a gesture from the former governor-general, May was assailed by spears of light from all around her, englobing her for all angles. May countered with a globe of ice around her that shielded her from the assault. Only a matter of time before my spears breaks through your armor, Azazel chuckled. Icicle assault. From the frozen ground beneath the fighters, a massed array of ice spears flew up to attack Azazel, who dodged them with some difficulty due to the sheer number of them. May took this opportunity to appear via a teleportation circle behind Azazel and tried to impale him with a sword made of ice, which Azazel blocked with his artificial arm. Schweinehind. May snarled as she pushed the arm back. Now that wasn't very nice. Azazel noted as he sent her flying. May recovered from her flight and shook her head. I have to say, Azazel, you are quite the irritating opponent. I get that a lot. The fallen angel shrugged, ready to give up. Not quite yet. May replied, Frost Dragon. With a spike in the already chilly air, the shape of a large western dragon took shape beneath May's feet. A long sinuous neck, a pair of massive wings, 4 sets of razor-sharp talons and a long whip-like tail combined together to form a very scary-looking beast that dwarfed Azazel by a considerable margin. Crap. Kiba said faintly. That dragon is a mere caricature, a shell of a true dragon. SeerKing said bracingly, even empowered by the fangs of the blue dragon, it stands no chance against Azazel. I wonder what she is planning. This is interesting. Azazel said carefully, I can detect some actual draconic power from that sacred gear now. Well, the name of the sacred gear does give away the fact it has the power of a dragon inside it. May deadpanned, the fangs of the blue dragon has the power of a Norse frost dragon sealed within it. The power only, not the mind. So you are incapable of using the juggernaut driver break down the beast. Azazel said with a nod, good to know. Issei shuddered as the fallen angel uttered the name of the forbidden technique he had fallen into after he had thought Shalba Beelzebub had killed Asia. The blonde ex-nun noticed his shudder and hugged him in an effort to alleviate his bad memories. Thanks Asia. Issei patted her on the head in gratitude. On the screen, Azazel was dodging tooth, talon and tail from the faux frost dragon, as well as a hail of icicles from May. Azazel looked intrigued by this for some odd reason. Looks like he's wondering the same thing I am. McGregor said grimly, why is she not using her gravity magic or her own sacred gear? Yes, I have been wondering this as well. SeerKing agreed, there is no possible way she could have mastered the fangs of the blue dragon in a mere 3 years. What we are seeing is impressive, but hardly the pinnacle of what the previous wielder could accomplish. Arisu was taught personally by Serafal in the use of her ice magic. By Serafal Sama Issei gaped at this. He. Serafal grinned, Arisu Tan was an eager student. Her heritage as a Yukiana made the magic of the sacred gear even more powerful than normal. No one has ever wielded that sacred gear with more skill than her. As fun as this is, you can't beat me at this level of power, May. Azazel remarked as he smashed the head of the frost dragon, you know that as well as I do. Indeed. It seems I shall have to raise my game somewhat. The stray devil replied, I had hoped that this wouldn't happen for a while, but oh well. Adopting the same pose as when she summoned the fangs of the blue dragon, she called out, Takana Marisu, by my will and power, I call you forth in my time of need. Fight in my stead and grant me victory. The blue glow returned and covered May's body completely, hiding it from sight. When the light faded, a completely different person stood floating in her place. Wearing a blue yukata with snowflake decorations, long blonde hair with blue highlights mixed and fluttering in the breeze. Her black eyes gazed at a stupefied Azazel with a smirk on her face. Arisu Tan Serafal whispered in disbelief at the sight of her former student. Mew the girl on the screen pouted, honestly, May no Aneki. You just didn't want to have to fight him anymore, didn't you, May? Azazel asked carefully, is that still you? I'm not May no Aneki. The girl huffed, I'm Arisu. You've been pushing Aneki around without even trying, so she brought me out to fight you. Prepare yourself, Azazel. Balance break. What? Yelled everyone in the room, including Serafal and SeerKing. On the screen, the fallen angel looked stunned as well. Arisu, at least the being that claimed to be Takana Marisu, was enveloped by an icy wind that ruffled her yukata and made her hair dance in the grasp of the breeze. The form of the necklace changed into a large silver collar, with countless thin and delicate silver chains draped down the front like chainmail. From the back, a long white cape emerged and attached itself to silver bangles and anklets that appeared on her wrists and ankles. For a moment, all was silent as the wind died down, and then Arisu spoke. Fangs of the blue dragon balance breaker heart of frozen purgatory. Impossible, Serafal whispered, this is impossible. Arisu-chan died, I saw the body myself, so how is she there right now using her balance breaker? Frozen Leviathan, Arisu declared. In an instant, a large serpentine creature twice the length of the airship nearby was created. Raising its great maw, the Leviathan roared its defiance to the heavens. This attack was one of the first I created after I gained my balance breaker, in honor of Serafal-sensei. Arisu said as she raised a hand and pointed at Azazel, vanish beneath the icy depths as I decree absolute ice age. The Leviathan roared and started to circle in the air before unleashing a massive blast of ice magic that literally froze everything in its path. Even the air wasn't spared, creating a massive glacier that grew at a frightening speed. Azazel snapped out of his stupor and launched an endless number of light spears at the growing glacier, shredding it as if he was carving a mountain. As fast as the spears destroyed ice, however, the ice just kept growing, relentlessly and inexorably closing in on Azazel. It's pointless to resist, you know. Arisu remarked as she idly played with her hair with one hand, the ice will grow and grow, until it swallows its target whole. The next minute, she stiffened. Damn, at my limit already, aren't you lucky, Azazel? She gasped out as the ice stopped growing and started to crumble, as did the Leviathan. I'll retreat for today, but we will fight again. In the flash of a magic circle, Arisu vanished, a look of anger and frustration on her face. Azazel's voice came over the TV speakers, sounding irritated. SeerKing, what the hell? How is it that she was not only able to use the sacred gear, but also change her appearance and use the balance breaker of the previous user? I have no idea. The man Lucifer replied via the microphone he had that linked to the built-in radio on Azazel's artificial arm. Serafal here is almost catatonic with shock at seeing her former student when she should be dead these last 3 years. Could she have been cloned? Azazel pondered, no, that can't be it. Cloning technology is primitive at best and only creates a body with no soul. The person I just fought definitely had a soul. This can't wait until later. SeerKing sighed, get in that zeppelin and find out what it was that she took. We have to know at least that much so we can plan how to protect my future brother-in-law. On it. Azazel replied. His image on screen dived into the open airlock that May had emerged from as the screen faded to black. What the hell is going on? Sekiryūtei was scowling at the wall, how was May able to do that? An illusion. I would very much like to see an illusion that could affect an angel, even one of the fallen. SeerKing shook his head, something is more than slightly off here. Grafia, go to the Bael family and request the presence of Sekiryūtei Bael. He spent quite a bit of time with May before she went rogue. He was also familiar with Amadeus Bael. If you can, request the presence of the survivor of Amadeus's peerage from Lord Bael as well. Understood. Grafia nodded before she vanished in a teleportation circle. Rias, you, Akeno and Issei-kun cannot go out without protection. SeerKing said seriously. He hasn't even taken Ria's Butchu's virginity, let alone mine. Akeno pouted with a teasing glint in her eyes as both Issei and Rias flushed red, so I think protection won't be needed for a while. SeerKing's lips twitched in amusement. Granted, but I was thinking of guards rather than condoms. You three are not to go anywhere without a pair of guards from your peerage. Ani-sama, I understand why Issei has guards, but why do I and Akeno need guards as well? The crimson-haired ruined princess asked. In the last 3 years, there have been numerous attacks against peerages that have been tentatively attributed to May. Smjai replied, she tests the queens and crushes the kings. Almost always, the symbol of the queen is left at the scene of the crime. Why? Akeno asked with a frown. She seems to have taken it upon herself to punish those like Diable Astaroth who mistreat their peerages and collaborate with the Cows Brigade. SeerKing replied, she carries a grudge against kings and punishes them severely. She tests the queens and punishes them severely should they fail. So she's been helping the underworld. Kiba said slowly as he processed this. In a manner of speaking, yes. Sekiryūtei said with a frown, it could be a form of atonement for the murder of her master and peerage, but regardless of that, what she has done is irredeemable. No act of supplication can ever forgive the transgression of killing her master, let alone her peerage. She called them her sisters. Issei noted, what was her peerage like? Allow my companion to answer that, Sekiryūtei. A familiar voice said from the doorway. Standing there was a tall young man with black hair and violet eyes. Sekiryūtei. Issei greeted his rival friend warmly. It is good to see you, Sekiryūtei. Sekiryūtei said with a smile, I hear that your boosted gear is disempowered. Ah yeah, Issei materialized the red gauntlet on his left arm. I can use the basic abilities and the basic balance breaker, but not the techniques I used against your peerage or you. That isn't a good thing when your opponent is May. Sekiryūtei said grimly, has your body recovered from your resurrection? Pretty much. Issei replied, why? I'll start training you. The man declared, if your sacred gear isn't up to scratch, I'll increase your basic physical abilities. If nothing else, you'll last longer against her once Drag recovers. Yeah, but who knows how long that will take. Issei sighed as he dismissed the boosted gear, I mean, has there ever been a case of this happening in the past? Of one of the 2 heavenly dragons overusing their powers and sleeping within their sacred gears? To the best of our knowledge, no. SeerKing admitted, usually the wielder uses up their life force and sanity long before the divine dividing and boosted gear even come close to approaching their limits. Perhaps Azazel will have an idea once he gets back. In any case, you should all hear May's story from one who knew her. Sekiryūtei, did she come? Yes. She should be here in a moment. The heir to the Bael family replied, she wasn't happy to hear about May. Understandable. SeerKing sighed. The girl walked into the room just then. She had long brown hair tied into a pigtail and wore the clothes of a retainer of the Bael family. Her black eyes scanned the room before she bowed slightly at the 2 ma'am. I come at your summons, ma'am Sama. She said in a quite respectful voice. You have my thanks, Chiaki-chan. SeerKing nodded, your former queen, May Schwarzwald, has attacked 2 fallen angel institutions and has declared her intent to steal the Sekiryūtei's boosted gear. Issei-kun and my sister, as well as the rest of her peerage and Sona Citri's peerage, need to hear May's story from one who knew her. Will you help us in this? May-ni-sama, the girl breathed, I'll help you, ma'am Sama, but then I'm going to track her down and avenge my sisters. She turned to the rest of the room. My name is Amakusa Chiaki, formerly a pawn in Amadeus Bael's peerage and the only survivor of May Schwarzwald's massacre. I will tell you her story, as much as I know of it, as she told it to me. Chiaki looked around at the Gremory group and asked, what is it you currently know about May-ni-sama? Not much. Akeno replied. The queen of the Gremory group was in the middle of making tea as she spoke, just that she was a German-Chinese half-blood, that she lived in Nagoya with her mother until someone killed her mother, which awakened her sacred gear. I see. The brunette pawn said softly, we had better sit down. This might take some time to explain. Once all of the people in the room, except Akita, were seated, the girl began her tale. As you stated, Mei-ni-sama was half German and half Chinese. Chiaki said, her mother was Hildegard von Schwarzwald, the former heiress to the Schwarzwald Magic Society, while her father was one of the deputy dragons of a great tong in Hong Kong, Mao Mao Lin Wei. What's a tong? Gasper asked timorously. Something similar to the triads. Akita explained, they started out as community organizations that helped out the neighborhoods they were founded in, but were almost always eventually turned to crime, as they had a fair number of triads as members. Nowadays, there is only a very subtle difference between the two. Mountain Master is the name given to the person in charge of the organization, while there is a council of deputy dragons, each jockeying for position to be the next Mountain Master. Mao Mao team was a superstitious person. Chiaki continued with a nod to Akita as thanks for the explanation. When he found out that Hildegard was a witch, he cast her out, already 3 months pregnant with Mei-ni-sama. How could he do such a thing? Issei hissed, his sense of right and wrong mortally offended by such a thing. Seerking looked as if he agreed with his sentiments. Tongs tend to be very traditional. Chiaki shrugged. Anyway, Hildegard-san couldn't return to her family, as they had cast her out for falling for a normal human, so she fled to Japan and here, gave birth to her daughter, Evumame Schwarzwald. Wait, so Mei is just a nickname? Irina asked curiously. No, she legally changed her name when she found out about her father and his actions. Chiaki replied, she was really angry anyway. For the next 12 years Mei-ni-sama lived her life to the fullest. She was a natural genius at magic and magical theory, as well as possessing some talent in martial arts. She started learning Bagwazhang when she was 8. Mind, body and magic, all 3 were trained by her mother, so she could protect herself. The 8 trigrams palm. Kaneko stated with a flicker of interest, one of the 3 main styles of Wudang Kung Fu, an internal style focusing on circle walking as a training method. Which offshoot does she use? Ying. Chen. The original style developed and used by Dong Heichuan. Chiaki replied, he was welcomed into the Bael family in 1869 and taught Mei-ni-sama himself. Prior to her becoming a devil, she used a Gao style created by Gao Yixing. Dong-san was very impressed with her skill. Seerking put in. Everything was going well for them until events in China moved to crush their happiness. Chiaki said sadly, Mao Mao was to be elevated to the rank of Mountain Master in his tong, but he had to eliminate any disgraces to his honor before he could do so. Disgraces? Surely you don't mean Akeno's face took on a distressed expression as she recalled being hunted by the Himejima clan for being half an angel. Chiaki nodded grimly. He was ordered to have his former lover and bastard child killed before he ascended to his long sought after goal. He gave the orders without hesitation. Asia's eyes filled with tears as she heard this and offered to pray to the Lord for the soul of Mei's mother. To have been slain for such a petty and useless reason and by a former lover of all things. He contacted a group of genuine Taoist mages who hated foreigners and half-breeds. Chiaki said with a mow of distaste, they took the job without even asking for payment. As it turned out, one of their members possessed a sacred gear, the 8 sealing pillars, which have the ability to cut off the flow of magic within an area that they encircle and interfere in casting magic within that area also. Lord, Mei's mother would have been helpless. Zenobia muttered in shock. Cut off from recharging her magic and having to cast through interference like that with what little power she could force through. Talk about a Herculean task. She was. The attack came as a complete surprise, but she still fought back. She actually eliminated a third of the attacking mages, even with all the demerits she was laboring under. Chiaki smiled grimly, then one of the Taoists blew her head open right when Mei-ni-sama looked out from her room. The stricken expressions on the faces around her were more than adequate to express their feelings on the subject. That was when it began. Mei-ni-sama's rage and grief combined with her natural talent unlocked her sacred gear, which she used to utterly crush the Taoist mages literally. Why does that sound more like a description than a metaphor? Issei sighed. Because that is exactly what she did to them. Seerking said calmly, Mei crushed the mages to death using her sacred gear, the powerful and rare fatal attraction, which grants her absolute control over gravity within a set area. It was what gave her such finesse and control over regular gravity magic. I've never heard of that sacred gear before. Ria said in confusion. There are thousands of sacred gears, Ria. Seerking said calmly, as you well know, there are common ones, such as the twice critical, rare ones such as Twilight Healing, and the 13 Longinus, are the only unique sacred gears in existence. Ria's nodded her head in understanding. There are only 2 fatal attraction sacred gears in existence, and their power ranks just below the 13. He continued, it was for that reason that when we devils detected a massive upsurge of power that roughly matched the signature of the fatal attraction, we sent a team to investigate. Among them was our premier sacred gear expert barring Ajuka, Amadeus Bael. There was silence for a moment before Chiaki continued. After she killed the mages, Mei-ni-sama collapsed from the power expenditure of using her sacred gear for the first time, combined with the trauma of her mother being killed. When she came around, the first 4 people she laid eyes on was the 4-mam. We invited her to become a devil. Serafal said tightly. She accepted, as she had no one else to go to, but then the problem became where to put her. I would have suggested Sotan, but she had only just acquired her queen piece. How did you know that she would require the queen piece in order to become a devil, Wani-sama? Sona asked curiously. Ajuka has a device he uses to estimate such things. Seerking answered, and it isn't just any queen piece she took in a mutation queen piece, with an estimated power rating of a queen and 2 pawns. Eh? The Gremory group looked stunned at this. Issei was incredible because he had absorbed all 8 of Ria's pawn evil pieces. Saji, in Sona's peerage, was amazing for absorbing 4. A queen plus 2 pawns had a value of 11. We were rather taken aback by the information as well, which was why we first looked to close family members of the 4-mam to place her with. Seerking said with a half smile, Ajuka is a recluse, and not many of his family actively use their peerages. Serafal had Sona, but as she stated, that fell through. Falbium well, he's a lazy bastard. As for myself, I would have suggested Ria's, but she tore off and gave her queen piece to Akeno. That was when one of the remaining members of the 72 pillars was brought up. Chiaki added, the Bael family was chosen because of their close blood ties with the House of Gremory, and Amadasama volunteered for the assignment because of his fascination for sacred gears. The servitor of the Bael family looked lost in thought for a moment before she continued. Over the next 6 years, she gathered all of us, saving us from situations that should have killed us. I, for example, was about to be murdered by the Yakuza when she came in and slew them. All of us were unwanted and alone, but she took us in and adopted us, called us family, sisters. She planned on trading for us once she was promoted to a high-class devil. Mei was a combination of mother, sister, confidant, training instructor and king substitute for the peerage. Sekiryūtei added, Amadeus may have been the king in name, but he rarely left his estate, so Mei shouldered that burden as well. This was in addition to training herself into the ground repeatedly and helping me. Mei helped you? Riaz looked at the man in astonishment. She used her magic to increase the gravity of the room, so I could train harder and build my muscles faster and stronger. Sekiryūtei replied, Liban, my knight, uses gravity gel to emulate the effect, but it isn't as powerful as Mei's magic, so it takes longer to get the same results, and Liban has much lower reserves of demonic energy than Mei, so he can't use it for as long either. No wonder I had to use my Cardinal Crimson promotion in order to beat you. Issei said in mild disbelief as he thought, this guy's training regime is nuts. Everything was going well, we were all happy. Chiaki spoke quietly, lost in her memories, until that day, 3 years ago. My sisters were slaughtered, their sacred gears stolen, and I was left alone with the knowledge that the only reason I was left alive was because I didn't possess a sacred gear of my own. After the alarm went up, I went to look for Mei. Sekiryūtei said, his face darkening as he spoke, when I found her, I attacked at once, from behind, with the element of surprise on my side, and she batted me to one side like a fly. Our battle was vicious, but brief. My emotions clouded my judgment and I was defeated. A day later, Mei assaulted the main castle of the Bael family and stole the bodies of her former peerage, killing any guards between her and her quarry. Seerking concluded grimly, then, she disappeared until a year later, when the entirety of her father's tong was massacred to the last man, with him being the last to die. Carved onto his body were a couple of lines in Italian. McGregor added grimly, Il giudizio finale sta per essere remesso. Nessuno più emendarsi dal peccato ci scori nel vin. The final judgment shall be delivered. Zenobia translated, nobody can escape the sins that flows in their veins. After that, there was barely any trace of her, save for the occasional sighting until today. Akita finished. Do you have any footage of her? Chiaki asked. We do, but you might not want to see it. Seerking said gently, she assumes the form of a member of your former peerage. Her gaze met that of the Mam Lucifer unflinchingly. I have to see. She said stoically. But the sigh, Seerking nodded at Saji, who was operating the DVD-R, to start the playback. Chiaki sat through the video of Mei attacking the Grigori HQ expressionlessly, but when she saw her former queen transform into one of her bishops, she gasped incredulously. Risuni. I knew it was her. Serafal said triumphantly. Nobody doubted you, Wani-sama. Sona said tiredly. Sotan no Ijueru. Serafal pouted. So she intends on coming after the Sekiryūtei and his boosted gear then. Chiaki mused aloud, Mei-ni-sama is just as confident as ever, deliberately telling you who her target is. Wait, so she purposefully spoke aloud during her attack on Grigori HQ to tell us that I was her target? Issei asked in disbelief, why? How better to demoralize your enemy than to tell them you are going to attack somewhere or kidnap someone, then breaking through all of the obstacles in your way and achieve your goal? Chiaki replied, she always strives for a complete victory, even using the enemy's own techniques against them to completely crush their will to fight, if she can. Sheer strength cannot defeat her. Regardless of her skills and power, she cannot defeat two of the four, ma'am. Seerking pointed out, as long as we are here, Issei-kun is safe. In which case, she will either lure Issei-san out by capturing someone close to him to use as bait, or she will find a way to force you both to leave his side. Chiaki stated flatly, in addition, you are indeed two of the four, ma'am. You cannot guard them indefinitely without neglecting your responsibilities. What do you suggest we do then? Just hand my Issei over to this woman. Riaz asked darkly. I will not permit it. Chiaki removed a pendant from around her neck and held it up. This is a magical communications device that Mei-ni-sama created for the members of her peerage. Using it, we could communicate safely with each other if both the sender and recipient are in the same world. An inventive device. McGregor commented, so you are proposing what, exactly? Before she left the first time, Mei-ni-sama challenged me to become strong enough to kill her and to only use this to challenge her when I attain that strength. Chiaki's eyes burned with deep-seated hatred. I intend to challenge her. Win or lose, we lure her out of hiding. Do you really think she'll show herself? Kiba asked skeptically. She has to know that this will be a trap. She'll still come. Chiaki's voice was firm on this. She will honor her challenge to me. She'll probably be amused by the thought of being trapped. Seerking-sama? Akita asked. Do it. The crimson-haired man said after a moment. The brunette nodded and held the pendant flat on her palm and started channeling demonic energy into it. Mei-ni-sama. She said clearly. A small hologram flickered into existence above the pendant almost at once. A miniature figure of Mei Schwarzwald looked up at Chiaki curiously. Chiaki-chan. Mei's voice was just as clear as if she was in the same room. It's been a while. You're well, I trust. I am. Chiaki's voice was frosty with silent rage. I hereby accept your challenge. Name the place and I will be there. Oh? The stray devil's voice was drawn out in curiosity. Very well. Tomorrow, after school hours, at Kum Academy. Your choice of confrontation. Martial arts. Chiaki declared firmly, no magic, no demonic powers, no sacred gears, no minions. Clever girl. Mei said in amusement, I'll be there. I look forward to seeing how much you have improved, little one. Give my regards to Seerking for me. With that, her image flickered out, leaving Issei to ask, Seerking, why the hell is she calling you young master? At night. Issei's room, Heim residence. Issei sighed as he lay back on his bed, alone for once. That was actually a rather hard thing to accomplish, being alone in a house full of his fellow peerage members, childhood friend turned angel and occasionally members of Volley's group, like Lafay and Kuroka. Even Ophis was around here somewhere. He stared at his left arm with a troubled expression on his face. It felt weird. Not bad weird, but unusual weird. Drake was asleep inside the boosted gear because he had expended so much of his power tethering Issei's soul to the sacred gear and fusing with Great Red, the first time such a thing had happened in the history of the boosted gear, according to Seerking. I really cause problems for people, don't I? He sighed. Really, Asia had been killed and brought back as a devil not long after he met her, ditto for Zenobia after hearing the truth that the god of the Bible was dead, and Riaz. He had hurt his girlfriend master by being so dense as to how she had felt for him for so long. It had taken getting a beating from Seerking to get it through to him how much she cared for him. As for the rest, Asia, Zenobia, Irina, Akeno, Ravel and Kaneko, he had hurt them by not confiding in them about the scars the fallen angel Rainer had left on his heart and mind, her last curse, if you will, and how that had left him with a case of severe insecurity as a result. Yes, he had still perved on them, except Asia, Ravel and Kaneko, but he had almost frozen every time they hugged him. He had constantly wondered if him being around such lovely bishmjo was allowed, if he was worthy of them, etc., etc. He was now at least confident that those in Ria's peerage liked him. Asia and Zenobia wanted him to trade for them when he moved up to being a high-class devil, for crying out loud. Ravel was an uncertainty, at least to his mind. Yes, Riaz had told him how she had been devastated by his apparent death at the hands of Shalba Beelzebub, but wasn't that simply admiration? Besides, she was a high-class devil from a family of equal standing as the Gremory. She could surely have her pick of guys. She was certainly cute enough. Irina was one heck of a complicated mess. Yes, he liked her, but she was an angel, and he had seen her come close to becoming one of the fallen if he just complimented her. What would she think if he caused her to fall? Would she hate him? He thought it likely. Out of all his peerage, he could empathize the most with Akeno, as a lot of her insecurities had been laid bare to him. Her hatred for her father leaving her mother to the not-so-tender mercies of her clansmen, her self-hatred because of the fallen angel blood that ran through her veins, and her secret fear he would reject her because of his bad experiences with fallen angels. As he had said to her once before, Akeno was Akeno. He may dislike fallen angels, but he could never dislike her. Her amazing physical assets aside, she was a good person, not at all like Rainer. Yes, her sadistic side was more than slightly scary, but every so often, she showed a very gentle side to her that he found absolutely adorable. Zenobia and Asia were very similar and yet very different at the same time. Both were sheltered, having been brought up by the church, and yet the way that upbringing manifested itself was very different. Asia was sweet and kind, the eternal innocent, yet with a core of steel, and a hidden determination that took him by surprise sometimes. By contrast, Zenobia was blunt, direct and honest to the point of stupidity on occasion. She was upfront with her desires and occasionally so whimsical that it gave him whiplash. Yet she also had an innate kindness like Asia's own that shone through when she was with a former nun. It helped that they were both beautiful. And had lovely oppai. Kaneko-chan was perhaps the greatest mystery to him. Petite, delicate and sometimes emotionless, she could nevertheless pick up a car and throw it a li away, as well as pop out her nekamimi and tail, to look good enough to eat. She was way too small for any kind of activity however, so she was, much to her continued displeasure, the easiest for him to control his perverted desires around. Her rivalry with Ravel was cute though. As for Rias, the crimson-haired ruined princess, the person who resurrected him, his master and girlfriend. He loved her and she him. Her protective instincts for him were at an all-time high because she had almost lost him 3 weeks ago. And now he is in danger of being captured and killed by the only SSS-rank stray devil in the history of the rating games, a woman so greedy for power that she had slain not only her master, but also the entirety of her peerage, barring the only member who did not possess a sacred gear. Yet things did not add up for Issei. May had been orphaned by her own father and had treated her peerage like an extension of her family. Then she just goes mad one day and kills them all at a drop of a hat. The dissonance between the two people, May the mid-rank devil and May the queen of blood and betrayal, was a rather stark one. "I'm Issei," a familiar voice said, making the Sekiryūtei jerk himself upright. Ophis, the Ouroboros dragon and infinite dragon god, stood in the corner of his room wearing her usual goth loli dress. "Oh, Ophis." Issei sighed, "You startled me. How long have you been there?" "Since just now." She replied, "I teleported in via magic circle. And this is her power after being drained, twice the strength of the two heavenly dragons at their full strength." Issei thought with a sweat drop at how easily she bypassed the anti-teleportation seals on the room with her power. "Can I help you then?" he asked. "You're being targeted by Mei-chan," Ophis stated. "Yes I am, wait, Mei-chan," Issei replied, only realizing part of what Ophis said as he spoke. "Yuhe." The old mam faction tried to recruit her into the Cow's brigade. Ophis stated, "She beat them up and tossed them out. Cao tried and she refused. Then I went. She politely told me that she had her own goals to accomplish and she wouldn't be able to help me. She also told me to just call her Mei-chan rather than her full name. She told the infinite dragon god to call her Mei-chan." Issei stated dully, "Tell me something, Ophis. Was she strong when you met her?" "Stronger than you are now." Ophis replied bluntly, "With Drake disempowered, cutting you off from illegal move Trina and Cardinal Crimson promotion, if she attacked you now, you would certainly put up a valiant fight, but you would eventually lose. Way to be blunt." Issei muttered, "Well, do you know how long it will take Drake to wake up? Materialize the boosted gear." Ophis directed. "Boost." In a flash of red light, the red gauntlet appeared on his left hand. Ophis placed both of her hands on it and focused for a moment, covering the entire sacred gear in a black aura for a moment. 20 years. Ophis pronounced, "A fairly short time for dragons and devils." "That's all very fine and good, but she could attack me tomorrow." Issei noted with a sigh. "Wake him up then." Ophis said simply, as if Issei was being dense. "If I could do that, I would have long before now." Issei retorted, before giving Ophis a shrewd look, "I don't suppose you know how to wake Drake up, do you?" "I do. Care to tell me?" Drake is one of the Netenrik, the two heavenly dragons, on par with the 6 dragon kings. Dragons of their level can empower one another, with the only exception being between Drake and Albion, as their powers are opposites. Get one of the dragon kings to give some of their power to Drake, and he will awaken. Ophis replied as if such a thing should be obvious. "The only dragon king I know about is Tananasan." Issei frowned, "I don't think he counts now, as he's been reincarnated as a devil." "He doesn't count." Ophis agreed, "The Midgardsormr is sleeping at the bottom of the sea, Tiamat hates Drake, Yulong rarely shows himself and Vritra might help, but he is imprisoned within multiple sacred gears, so he is not at full strength either." "That leaves Fafnir." "That name sounds familiar," Issei pondered. "Azazel made a pact with him. He was the core of Azazel's artificial sacred gear down full dragon spear, but he has now broken his pact with the Dragon King and gave the orb that signifies the pact to Asia Argento." Ophis explained. "How do you know this?" Issei asked. "Even with Cao stealing some of my power, I am still the infinite dragon god." She stated, "The only dragon with an existence superior to mine is Great Red. I know all that happens with dragons in any world. So Asia has the key to waking up Drake, huh?" Issei said, dragon kings are tough to deal with though. Can we convince him to help? Azazel sensei is one thing, but the rest of us? I have given Asia my blessing. Ophis told him she now has a very high affinity for dragons. If you wish, I can aid her in creating a pact with Fafnir. Be warned though, he is a perverted dragon that makes you seem mild by comparison. I can't let myself get killed again. Issei said with a determined look on his face, too many people would be hurt by it. Ophis, I'll be counting on you tomorrow, we're going to wake up Drag. End of the here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.